Meghan Markle, still in shock after King Charles ordered for royal guards to get her arrested and kicked out of Birmingham Palace. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. It began quietly, almost too quietly for anyone to sense the tremor it would send through the royal world. The morning air over Montecito had been unusually still, the kind of day when silence feels suspicious rather than peaceful. Meghan had been in her study reviewing notes for an upcoming charity initiative focused on women's empowerment. She was mid-sentence, her pen hovering above a page when her phone began to vibrate, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. At first, she thought it might be one of her staff members using a new line, or perhaps a call from a journalist seeking comment. But something in her gut told her this wasn't ordinary. When she answered, the voice on the other end was crisp, formal, and unmistakably British. "Good morning, Your Grace. This is Adrian Fenton from His Majesty's office. I hope I'm not disturbing you." The title, Your Grace, hit her like a cold gust of air. No one had addressed her that way since she and Harry stepped away from royal duties. It was a term that belonged to another lifetime, another version of herself she thought she had shed. "No, you're not disturbing me," she replied cautiously. "How can I help you?" There was a short pause, and then the voice continued. "His Majesty requests your presence at Birmingham Palace this evening. The matter is confidential and urgent." The way he said confidential made her skin prickle. There was no elaboration, no warmth, no trace of invitation, only command. "May I ask what this concerns?" she pressed, her tone controlled but wary. The aide's voice softened almost as if rehearsed. "It would be better discussed in person, Your Grace." The line went silent for a second, then clicked dead. Meghan sat still, the phone pressed to her ear even after the call ended. Something didn't sit right. She had been invited to the palace before. Of course, once during a brief attempt at reconciliation, other times for family-related discussions, but never had the tone been this direct. This final, urgent, and confidential were not words that typically accompanied royal pleasantries. She called her assistant into the room, relaying the message almost mechanically. "Did they say anything else?" the assistant asked, eyes wide. Meghan shook her head. "Nothing, just that I have to be there tonight." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The assistant finally broke the silence. "Do you think it's about the interviews?" It was a logical guess. Meghan had recently spoken candidly at a private event in Los Angeles, discussing the challenges of being part of an institution that often prioritized image over truth. Though her comments had been carefully worded, the British tabloids had seized upon them, twisting every phrase into an accusation. Meghan sighed. If it is, then they could have sent an email, not a royal summons. Her tone was calm, but her pulse told a different story. Something was off, and she could feel it in her bones. She dialed Harry immediately. He picked up within seconds, his voice thick with fatigue. Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "I just got a call from a palace aide. They want me to come to Birmingham Palace tonight. They said it's urgent." There was a long pause. "What?" Harry's tone sharpened instantly. "Who called you?" She gave him the name, and he exhaled heavily. "Adrian Fenton. I remember him. He works directly under Langley, my father's private secretary." He sounded more alert now, pacing. "And you're supposed to go alone." "That's what they said." "Don't go," Harry said flatly. "Not without me." Meghan closed her eyes. "Harry, you're in Nairobi. Your flight isn't until tomorrow. By the time you land, it'll be too late." "Then postpone it. Tell them you'll come when I'm back." You know they won't accept that," she replied quietly. "If I don't go, it'll look like I'm defying the king." Harry let out a frustrated sigh. They can't order you anymore. You're not under the royal system." She smiled faintly at his defiance. "You think that matters to them. Once a royal, always a royal in their eyes. They'll twist it however they want." There was silence on the line. When Harry finally spoke, his voice was low, strained. "Then promise me you'll take your security. Don't go alone, and if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately." "I promise," she said, though she wasn't sure whether it was a lie or an act of faith. After the call ended, Meghan sat in her chair, lost in thought. She knew Harry's instincts were rarely wrong. He had lived under the palace's shadow his entire life. He could sense danger where others saw diplomacy. Still, something inside her told her she needed to go, not out of obedience, but closure. If there was to be confrontation, she wanted to face it directly. The day stretched slowly, every hour thick with unease. News alerts on her phone showed the same endless cycle of royal gossip. Speculation about strained relations, anonymous sources, leaking half-truths to tabloids. She ignored most of them, but one headline caught her eye. Palace insiders urged decisive action over Duchess's comments. She felt her stomach twist. The phrase decisive action carried a familiar chill. In royal circles, that usually meant discipline disguised as diplomacy. By early evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Meghan stood by her window, watching the fading light. A black car waited outside. Her security team had already been briefed. She had kept the circle small. Only her closest aides knew where she was going. She didn't want the media catching wind of it before she even arrived. Before stepping out, she paused at a framed photo on the table, her and Harry, smiling at their wedding reception. There was hope in their eyes, a kind of belief that love could rewrite centuries of rigidity. She whispered softly, "I hope you're right, Harry," then left. The journey from London to Birmingham Palace felt longer than usual. The closer she got, the heavier the air became. Her driver, a quiet man who had worked with her since her early royal days, didn't speak. He didn't need to. The tension in the car said enough. When the palace finally appeared in view, its silhouette rising against the deep blue sky, Meghan felt her throat tighten. Every stone, every tower carried memories. She remembered the laughter of state dinners, the stiff smiles during official photos, the silent corridors where whispers replaced honesty. The gates loomed ahead, guarded and still. The royal insignia gleamed faintly in the dim light. It was then she noticed something odd. No media presence, no staff waiting at the entrance, no sign of the usual quiet buzz that surrounded any royal visit. The stillness was absolute. "Strange," she murmured. Her driver didn't respond. He simply looked straight ahead, his hands gripping the wheel. When the guards approached the car, their expressions were rigid, unreadable. One of them leaned in, confirming her identity. Her Grace Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. She nodded slowly. Yes. He exchanged a glance with the second guard, then signaled for the gate to open. The heavy iron bars groaned as they moved, the sound slicing through the silence. The car rolled forward into the palace grounds. As they passed the main courtyard, Meghan glanced around. The windows were dark, no welcoming committee, no assistants in tailored suits, just the sound of gravel under the tires and the faint rustle of wind. Something about it felt less like an invitation and more like an ambush. The car came to a stop before the grand steps. A lone figure stood waiting, a palace aide in a dark suit, holding a clipboard. He didn't smile. He merely nodded, gesturing for her to follow her grace. "This way, please." Inside, the halls were dimly lit. The grandeur was still there: polished marble floors, towering portraits of monarchs long gone, but the warmth was missing. The aide led her through a series of corridors, his pace steady, his silence unyielding. Finally, he stopped before a set of tall double doors. "His Majesty will see you shortly," he said. "Please wait inside." She entered the room. It was smaller than the grand hall, she remembered, but elegant in its austerity. A single chair sat near the center, positioned deliberately. On a side table rested a glass of water, untouched. She stood there alone, listening to the faint hum of the heating vents. Minutes passed, 5, 10, 20. No one came. Then the door creaked open behind her. Sir Edward Langley stepped inside, his face drawn and serious. "Her Grace," he greeted formally, his tone clipped. "His Majesty sends his apologies. He will not be able to meet you tonight. However, I am instructed to deliver a statement on his behalf." Meghan's pulse quickened. A statement. Langley nodded once, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Yes, this pertains to your recent conduct in public appearances. His Majesty wishes to make clear that the Crown cannot endorse or tolerate actions which undermine its integrity or security." "Security?" she repeated, incredulous. "I spoke at a women's event, not a rebellion." Langley's expression didn't change. "Your comments have been interpreted as damaging. His Majesty has therefore decided that until further notice, your access to all royal estates, including Birmingham Palace, will be suspended." Her heart stopped for a beat. "You can't be serious." Langley's eyes lowered briefly. "I am afraid this is not open to discussion." The moment hung between them like a blade. Before Meghan could speak again, a faint buzz came through Langley's earpiece. He turned slightly, listened, then gave a short nod. 2 royal guards appeared at the doorway. Meghan stepped back instinctively. "What is this supposed to be? Standard protocol." "Your Grace," Langley replied, though his voice betrayed a flicker of unease. "They will escort you from the premises." "On whose order?" she demanded. Langley met her gaze for the first time, His Majesty's, and with that, the illusion of civility shattered. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick, suffocating, and more deafening than any argument Meghan had ever endured. She stood frozen, her eyes locked on the 2 guards now flanking the doorway. Their expressions were professional masks, emotionless and distant. The air in the room had changed. It carried the weight of something cried deliberate. She had walked through these corridors once as a duchess, the wife of a beloved prince, a symbol of modern royalty. Now she was being treated like an outsider, an intruder in a world she had once been told she belonged to. "Escort me," she finally said, her voice steady despite the storm rising inside her. "You're escorting me from the palace if I'm a threat." Langley's lips tightened into a near whisper of regret. "It's not personal, Your Grace." She gave a humorless laugh. "Everything about this is personal. Sir Edward, don't insult both of us by pretending otherwise." But the guards had already stepped closer. One extended his hand toward her, gesturing politely but firmly toward the door. "This way, ma'am." Meghan stood her ground. "Tell His Majesty that if he wanted to silence me, this isn't the way. The world will know." Langley's composure faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned to its usual stillness. "With all due respect, Your Grace, the world already believes what it's told, and tonight it will hear His Majesty's version first." That was when she understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a preemptive strike, a carefully orchestrated maneuver designed to isolate her before she could defend herself. "Fine," she said coldly, "but I walk myself out." Langley inclined his head slightly. "As you wish." turned, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she walked past the guards. Their eyes followed her, cautious but restrained. Every step echoed through the long, deserted hallway, reverberating like the fading beat of a royal promise broken. The palace corridors seemed unfamiliar now, stripped of warmth. Paintings of monarchs and courtiers stared down from the walls, their expressions solemn and unyielding. It was as if the past itself was watching, judging, whispering through the silence. When she reached the entrance hall, the aide who had greeted her earlier was gone. Only her driver stood outside, looking uneasy. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked softly as he opened the door. Meghan hesitated before answering. "No," she said truthfully, "but drive." As the car pulled away, she looked back at the looming gates. They closed behind her with a heavy clang, final, deliberate. The sound echoed in her chest like a verdict. Her phone buzzed. It was Harry. "Mag, did you meet him?" She took a breath before answering. "No, he didn't show up." What do you mean? I was handed a letter instead," she said, her voice breaking slightly despite her efforts to stay composed. "They're cutting me off from the royal estates. Effective immediately." For a moment there was silence on the other end. Then Harry's voice came through. Controlled but furious, he had no right, none. "You're still my wife. That title was yours by law and by marriage." Meghan stared out the window at the blur of city lights. "It's not about law, Harry. It never was. It's about control." Harry exhaled sharply. "I'll deal with this when I get back." They've gone too far this time, but deep down, she knew he was fighting an old war with new weapons. The monarchy didn't fight with swords anymore. It fought with perception, and tonight, perception was already being weaponized. When Meghan arrived home, her assistant met her at the door, looking pale. "There's something you need to see," she said, holding up a tablet. The headline glared across the screen. In bold letters, "King Charles moves to protect the crown amid new Sussex controversy." Beneath it, the subhead read, "Sources claim the Duchess of Sussex made unauthorized statements compromising royal neutrality." There were photos, one of her stepping into the car earlier that evening, another of her speaking passionately at the Los Angeles event. The narrative had already been written. Meghan, the defiant outsider, the troublemaker who refused to learn her place. She scrolled down. The article quoted insiders, describing the king's decision as regrettable but necessary for the stability of the monarchy. It even suggested that her comments had potentially endangered diplomatic relationships. It was absurd. Nothing she'd said even remotely resembled a political statement. Yet, in the court of public opinion, truth had never mattered as much as timing, and the palace had moved first. "Release a statement," Meghan said quietly, calm, factual, no emotion, just the truth. Her assistant hesitated. "Should we wait for Harry to return?" "No, we can't let their version spread unchecked. By morning, the headlines will be global." As her team scrambled into action, Meghan walked to the window. The California night stretched endlessly, but her thoughts were miles away in London, in the corridors of a palace that had once felt like both home and cage. She thought of her children, of the world they were growing up in, half royal, half free. What would this mean for them? Would they grow up as symbols of defiance or victims of legacy? Her phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Meghan Markle. The voice was female, clipped, unmistakably British. "This is Fiona Havers from the Daily Herald. We've received reports that you were forcibly removed from palace grounds this evening. Would you like to comment before publication?" Meghan froze. "Forcibly removed?" The journalist continued smoothly. "That's the information we have. Yes. Our source claims guards escorted you from the premises, after a confrontation with Sir Edward Langley. "Can you confirm or deny?" Meghan inhaled slowly, fighting the rising fury in her chest. "No one forcibly removed me. I left of my own accord." Then, to clarify, "Did His Majesty revoke your access to royal properties?" "I was given a statement," she said carefully, "and I'll be addressing that publicly in due time." "Understood," Fiona replied briskly. "Thank you for your comment. Our piece runs in the morning edition." The line clicked off. Meghan lowered the phone, her fingers trembling slightly. It had already begun. The machine she and Harry had tried to escape was alive again, grinding, hungry, relentless. She turned back toward her assistant, who was typing furiously. "Send the statement to all verified outlets." Meghan instructed. No leaks, no tabloids, just the truth. But she knew the truth had never been enough before. And as she sat down, exhaustion setting in, she couldn't shake the image of Langley's cold face or the faint tremor in his voice when he said, "The world already believes what it's told." In the distance, the phone buzzed again. A new notification appeared. "Buckingham Palace issues formal response to Duchess of Sussex allegations." Her eyes widened. Allegations? She hadn't made any. At least not yet. The palace statement read, "His Majesty, the King regrets that the Duchess of Sussex has continued to engage in actions inconsistent with the values and responsibilities of the royal family. Decision to restrict her access to royal estates was made following legal counsel and with the crown's stability in mind." And then the line that changed everything. "The Duchess's recent communications have been flagged for review due to potential breaches of confidentiality agreements signed upon her departure from royal duties." Meghan's heart pounded. Breach of confidentiality? That wasn't just public image management. It was legal groundwork. They were building a case. For a brief moment, she saw it all clearly. The palace's calm precision, the deliberate leaks, the coordinated press timing. It wasn't chaos, it was choreography, and Meghan realized this wasn't the end of a feud. It was the beginning of a calculated war. The weight of the palace statement pressed down on Meghan like a physical force. She sank into her chair, running a hand through her hair, her mind racing with every possible implication. Legal counsel, restriction of access, breach of confidentiality. These weren't casual words. They were deliberate, calculated, and chilling. The monarchy didn't act impulsively. Every action, every statement, every move was designed to maintain the illusion of control. And tonight, she was confronted with the full power of that machinery. Her assistant hovered nearby, hesitant to speak. "Do you want me to draft a response?" she asked carefully. Meghan nodded slowly. "Yes, but this isn't just a response. It's the record. The truth needs to be stated clearly without emotion, without exaggeration. Otherwise, the narrative will consume everything." For hours they worked together, crafting a statement that balanced composure and defiance. Each word was weighed meticulously. Every phrase was a challenge without being inflammatory. She wanted the world to know that she had been summoned, humiliated, and ordered out of her own accord. But she also knew the power of restraint. Outside, the night deepened, yet Meghan couldn't sleep. She replayed the events in her mind, analyzing every glance, every pause, every word spoken by Langley and the guards. There was no mistake. The palace had executed the operation with precision, and she had walked straight into it. But why now? What had triggered this escalation? After months of cautious distance, she thought of the letter she had sent weeks ago, private, carefully worded, intended to address concerns about media narratives and the spread of misinformation. It had not been inflammatory, certainly not public, but somehow it had found its way into the palace's inner scrutiny. Someone had leaked it, and that leak, she realized, had lit the fuse for tonight's events. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Harry. He was back on the line, his voice tight with emotion. "I'm on the first flight back. I don't care what they've done. I'm coming to you, Harry," she said softly, trying to calm her rising panic. "It's okay."